What's up, YouTube? It's time for a review of the new Atmosphere record Fishing Blues, out 2 weeks ago, August 12th. I'm a bit late on this one, so I apologize. These last couple weeks I've done way too much drinking and partying and just counterproductive shit. Although then again, you could say that I was doing field research for reviewing an Atmosphere record because these two have practically made their name on songs about the negative effects of boozing too much. But anyway, these indie hip-hop giants are back again, still pumping out music like clockwork over 20 years into their career. They've been remarkably consistent, but they do have a pretty tough task in front of them when it comes to following up stuff and topping stuff like God Loves Ugly, which 14 years later still remains such a celebrated album for so many people. But still, that being said, their last record, Southsiders, which came out in 2014, one of my favorite hip-hop records of that year. It featured some great production from Ant, more subtle and understated as opposed to the beats on an album like When Life Gives You Lemons, which occasionally veered into some pretty gaudy territory. Southsiders may not have been a revolutionary record, but it was yet another solidly enjoyable Atmosphere record. With a lyricist of substance like Slug, you're always going to be looking forward to what he has to say next. And to me, that's the big difference between like a new Atmosphere project and a new Wiz Khalifa project. Which, not to knock Wiz, I love Kush and OJ, I love Rolling Papers. But have you guys heard that new Rude Awakening collab that he did with Juicy J and TM88? That is fucking horrific. Holy shit. Anyway, Slug has maintained his appeal as a lyricist for so long, in part because he's been so unapologetically himself and so transparent with his emotions. It's hard to think of a rapper who has done a better job being relatable and being genuine than Slug has. And for that reason, there are legions of people who will always be looking forward to new lyrics from him, and by the same token, new production from Ant, who has always given his words a fitting platform. And actually, the first thing to note about Fishing Blues is, in fact, the beats, which to me are the best thing about the LP. There's not a single instrumental on here that is unappealing or that sounds out of place. In fact, there's actually an instrumental version of Fishing Blues that's out there that I've been listening to as well, and I'm getting just as much enjoyment out of just hearing the instrumentals. Take a beat, for instance, like Chasing New York, which has these real dreamy pianos being accompanied by these warm, ascending bass runs that accentuate what I believe is a whole tone scale. That's what gives it that up in the clouds, dreamy kind of vibe. Yet it all sits over this simple boom bap feel that a lot of the instrumentals on Fishing Blues utilize. The song Won't Look Back has another one of my favorite beats. This one utilizes a bed of butter smooth acoustic guitars and then some bluesy electric guitars on top to kind of give it that Western road trip on foot kind of feel. And back in the mix a bit are some additional vocal arrangements that add a bit more melodrama. The beat on the song Still Be Here is perhaps the most moving, probably due to those weeping strings and the cute children's voices that are in the background. I also got to shout out that sinister beat on Pure Evil. I mean, there are so many highlights in this department. And the great thing too is that instrumentally, Fishing Blues feels cohesive, yet each beat has its own distinct personality and its distinct flavor. But the issue is that unfortunately, for the first time I can remember on an Atmosphere record, Slug's lyrics are often being overshadowed by the great production. Overall, I've found myself gravitating a bit more heavily to the beats on this thing as opposed to the lyrics. And that should never happen with a world-class MC like Slug on the mic. I think that part of it might just be due to the abundance of totally cringy bars on this album. I will say that part of Slug's appeal and his charm is to be so open and so blunt that it kind of makes you squirm a little bit. But there are a bunch of instances on here where he does it so uninventively that I can't really get past it. Exhibit A is the track Next to You, where Slug's rhyming about getting home late and having to jerk off instead of wake up his girl to bone, which I think could be some really funny, hilarious material to write about. But then he raps the following. I'd love to squeeze your butt and make you horny, but I know you gotta wake up in the morning. So I'ma just lay next to you and think about when I make sex to you. Ugh. Right there, the song was just ruined for me. There's a bunch of other instances, like on the song Like a Fire, the opening track, he drops the line, I'm like a Harley, you're like a Hardly. Or on No Biggie, he says, I want to put my DNA in your American pie. Ugh. Or Sugar, he says, you're like a tattoo that's on my eyeball. unfortunately, there's a good chunk of Fishing Blues where the rapping is just not quite up to par and or overly campy. It's still Slug though, so he definitely does deliver in spots. To me, the record ends with two of the strongest and most highly personal statements in the tracks Still Be Here and Along Hello. Still Be Here especially is so touching. It's one of a couple songs on here where he's marveling at his own fatherhood. And he raps lines like, I feel fortunate, I found fulfillment, I see my father in the faces of my children. You make it hard to be afraid of the future. And when I hear you singing along, I remember that I'll never be alone again. And the coolest part about Still Be Here is that the words are written in such a way that he could be addressing his children, but he could be addressing his fans. And I just love the broad application of what he's saying. And I love the heartwarming message in the closer here as well, Along Hello, where he's basically giving a different spin on breakup songs. Like, hey, we need a positive spin on leaving someone or separation. And he says stuff like, there's more songs praising the people we went to prison with than there are praising the people we make children with. And I tend to share his point of view. But perhaps my favorite song on the entire LP is the title track, Fishing Blues. All you gotta know about this track is that I fucking hate fishing. And this song made me want to grab my old rod and hop right in a boat and shoot down to the nearest lake. Ant's instrumental perfectly captures the serenity of being alone in the middle of a lake at sunset and just being completely at peace and away from the world. And the Grouch's smooth, calming delivery of the hook helps as well. It's a classic conceptual atmosphere track, but it's not about drinking or girls or the blue-collar workday. It's about fishing, and it is a slam dunk. I also love the track Everything. In the hook, Slug essentially sums up what has made him so appealing as an MC, saying that he doesn't pretend to be anything, doesn't pretend to fit into any category. He's just a human being, and in his own words, he's everything and everything in between. And I really enjoyed this message because I felt like it tapped into the universal truth of, at least what I believe, which is that human beings are capable of the entire spectrum of behavior. We're capable of greatness, we're capable of evil, and it's pointless to try to categorize ourselves based on being a good person or a bad person or a smart person or a dumb person. And I think he captures that sentiment in this song. And the beat is another knockout as well. It feels like, to me, a summertime brisk walk in the park. And alongside the cringier ones, there's some really clever bars on here as well. One of which I actually tweeted Slug himself about, and he thought I was being sarcastic at first, like giving him shit, which was really funny. But it's on the song Won't Look Back. In the first verse, he says, make giant steps, gotta catch the cold train, which is some really clever wordplay in reference to jazz legend John Coltrane, who made a song called Giant Steps. And the instant I heard that line, I made sure to head over to Rap Genius and annotate it. So go over there and upvote it, or if you want to be a dick, downvote it and get me on the moderator's bad side, whatever you prefer. So overall, I like Fishing Blues. It does feel a bit lightweight for an Atmosphere record in that a lot of the time it's not generating a super strong emotional reaction in the listener, at least this listener. But to be fair, this album doesn't feel like it's trying to blow you away. It feels like it was made in a modest spirit and in a fun spirit as well. To sum it up real easily, the production is spot on and the lyrics are spot T in places. But just by virtue of Atmosphere doing what they do, their music is always going to be more interesting than your average hip-hop, and Fishing Blues is no exception. Fishing Blues gets a 7 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I'll see you guys soon.